Jade Pollard first heard the rumors while standing in the ticket line beside her little sister Evie. A boy in a varsity jacket whispered them to his date, the way teenagers whisper ghost stories they half believe. Every turn ages you a year. People come out gray if they stay on too long. His girlfriend laughed, but moved a step away from the ride, towering beyond the cotton candy booths. The spiral rose like a gleaming corkscrew above the county fairground, its chrome ribs winking in the June sun. Unlike the Ferris wheel or the tilt-a-whirl, it had no seats. Riders entered a glass cylinder, pressed their backs to the wall, and the floor dropped away. Centrifugal force pinned them, while the cage revolved around a core so fast it blurred. Everyone talked about the sensation of their cheeks being pulled back. But the real fascination was the legend. Time inside the ride slowed to a syrupy crawl. Outside, a minute, maybe two would pass per spin. Inside, if you believe the stories, bodies barreled forward by 12 full months. Jade wasn't a superstitious person. She believed in Evie's homework folder, overdue rent, and the social worker who had given her exactly 90 days to come up with a legal safeguard, or the state would place Evie with foster parents. Jade, at 25, was too young to be named official guardian, too broke to be taken seriously as an adoptive candidate, and too afraid to let her sister sense any of that. "Can we go on the spiral?" Evie asked, yanking Jade's sleeve. "Maybe after the merry-go-round," Jade said. "I don't want you getting dizzy before lunch." She paid for ride coupons, pointed Evie toward the painted horses, and pretended she wasn't listening to the carnies brag about their showpiece attraction. One voice, low and rough as gravel, cut through the babble. "Time is just another ticket," said the man taking admissions at the spiral. His name tag read Pendle, and his eyes were the murky green of pond water. "Pay enough, and you can ride your whole life in under an hour." The words lodged in Jade's mind like a burr, and stayed there while she watched Evie float past on a golden mare. That night, after Evie fell asleep in their cramped apartment, Jade sat at the kitchen table, sorting bills her paycheck couldn't cover. She reread the letter from Child Services. The court recognizes your devotion to Evelyn Pollard. However, guardianship requires the primary caregiver to be at least 30 years of age or to present compelling evidence of stability. She did the math. 5 years separated Jade from that threshold. 5 years she didn't have. Out of habit, she reached for the old Polaroid taped to the fridge. She and Evie, cheeks smudged with powdered sugar, taken the summer their parents died in a commuter plane crash. Jade had been 19 then, Evie 4. No aunts, no grandparents, no money. Just each other. Pay enough, and you can ride your whole life in under an hour. The next evening they returned to the carnival. Jade pretended it was for the discount wristbands, but she had lain awake all night imagining the ride, her body hurling ahead 5 spins. 5 years, while the world outside blinked and barely noticed. She could come out the age the court demanded. Evie would never have to know what it cost. When they reached the spiral's queue, Evie's hand turned clammy in Jade's. "Maybe we should do the bumper cars again," her sister suggested. "Tell you what." Jade squatted so their eyes met. She smoothed the frizzy strand behind Evie's ear. "I want to go on this one. You wait right here with your funnel cake, and when I step out, we'll tackle every other ride before they close. Deal?" Evie, trusting as dawn, nodded. Jade kissed her forehead and joined the line. Up close, the ride hummed with a thrumming sound like a hive full of hornets. Fluorescent tubes spiraled upward, blinking red and violet, a hand-lettered sign dangled by a twist of baling wire. "The spiral, we are not responsible for." Lost articles, motion sickness, temporal drift. Someone had added in Sharpie, "No refunds." When Jade reached the turnstile, Pendle leaned forward, sniffed at her as if she were produce. "How many rotations you buying?" "5, she said, hoping her voice didn't crack. He raised a bristly brow. Most folks get off to 2, 3 if they drunk. I can handle 5. He shrugged, sold her a crimson punch card, and stamped her wrist with a spiral glyph that shimmered purple, then faded. When the floor rises, you step clear. Simple as breathing. A pause. Sometimes simpler. Jade entered the glass cylinder with 8 other riders. Most were teenagers chasing a thrill, same ones who'd brag later how nothing supernatural happened. She swallowed the impulse to bolt and pressed her back to the wall. The cage shuddered, and a siren whooped once overhead. The floor sank 3 feet, leaving only a metal grate to stand on, and the cylinder began to spin, slow at first, then faster, faster, until the world outside the glass smeared into a carousel of neon. Jade's stomach rose into her throat. Her arms felt pinned by invisible straps. The ride's lights flickered off, leaving only a faint ultraviolet glow inside. Then something happened that no physics lecture could have predicted. The noise thinned, stretched, vanished. Each breath entered her lungs as if through honey. Her heart drummed sledgehammer blows, but a curious weightlessness filled her skull. Time was quiet inside the spiral, as if someone had laid a heavy quilt over it. Across from her, a lanky boy's acne faded, his jaw squaring into a man's profile. His leather jacket tightened on thicker shoulders. He stared at his hands, mouth forming a sound Jade couldn't hear. 1 rotation. She felt it in her own bones, too. A swift knitting of cartilage, a taste of iron in her saliva, the invisible ledger of youth flipping pages. 2. Her mind raced through memories in brittle flashes. College sophomore year, dropping out to pick up double waitressing shifts, late nights teaching Evie long division. She felt them settle, not as regrets exactly, but as rooms she'd walked through and locked behind her. 3. Hair tickled her forehead, heavier. She imagined each follico-pigmentation cell dimming a fraction. Her joints throbbed with micro-injuries, the sprained ankle from soccer at 14, the stress fracture from overtime shifts. 4. Sweat glazed her shirt. She wondered if the others noticed the subtle stoop that crept into their postures. 5. Abruptly, the centrifugal weight vanished. The floor rose with a clang, and gravity reclaimed her body. The cylinder slowed until the fairground resolved beyond the glass. Music from the midway rushed in, absurdly cheerful. A gate hissed open. The boy in the varsity jacket stumbled out first, gaping at the stubble shadow on his chin. 2 girls followed, touching crow's feet etched at the corners of their eyes. None had ridden more than 3 spins. They'd age into their mid-20s. They howled with laughter, half choked with panic. Jade forced her legs forward. A world of differences announced themselves. Her jeans felt too short. Her sneakers squeezed narrower feet. Her shoulders bore a denser weight, muscle, or maybe responsibility layering itself under skin. She found Pendle leaning on the payment booth, smirking. 5 it was, he said. Enjoy the bonus years. How old do I look? 30-ish. He flicked his gaze over her. You wear it better than some. Jade hurried back to the railing where Evie waited, licking powdered sugar from her fingers. A minute, maybe 2, had passed on the midway clocks. Twilight hadn't shifted. Ready? Jade asked, forcing cheer. Evie stared at her, puzzled. Did you do something to your hair? How many's? Jade said, tugging a stray lock. She prayed Evie couldn't see the faint crease between her brows that hadn't existed 10 minutes before. Let's ride the swings. They spent the evening darting from attraction to attraction. If Evie noticed her sister's longer stride or deeper laugh, she chalked it up to the magic of carnival night. Jade purchased extra tickets, let Evie stay up past her bedtime, and tried not to study her own reflection in vendor windows. Back home, after tucking Evie in, Jade locked herself in the bathroom. Under the harsh bulb, her face looked subtly rearranged. Cheekbones sharpened, baby fat gone. Nothing radical, but the difference sang through her posture. She flexed her hands, marveling at tendons that stood out like cords. 5 years and 5 minutes. The next weeks blurred with appointments. Fingerprints, background checks, a new waitressing position that came with health benefits. At each meeting, Jade laid out meticulously labeled binders. Employment history, bank statements, apartment lease. The only falsehood sat in her birth certificate file. A single digit trimmed from 1997 to 1992. It passed without question. She looked the part, yet nights brought dreams of spinning darkness. She woke aching, as though the ride's gravity still pressed her ribs. She chalked it up to stress until the morning she found her first silver hair coiled in the sink like filament. 3 weeks before the custody hearing, she heard Evie whispering in the living room. The child held Mom's old camcorder, acting out a pretend newscast. "My sister is actually 25, Evie told the imaginary lens. Yesterday she was. Today she's 30. She peered into the viewfinder. Something really weird happened. Jade's stomach iced. She took the camcorder gently. "Where'd you get that idea?" "I can tell." Evie wriggled away, arms crossed. "Your voice is different. You don't hum in the shower anymore, but you sigh like Grandma did before she—" Her lip trembled. "Did you ride the spiral more than once?" Jade knelt. "Okay, here's the truth. I rode 5 times. That's all. I needed adults to take me seriously." 5! Evie's eyes welled. "That's 5 whole birthdays we never had together." The words cleaved something inside Jade that the ride hadn't touched. She gathered Evie close. "Nothing stole our birthdays. I still remember every one of yours. I just used an express lane." Evie let herself be held, but remained stiff. Promise you won't go again." "I promise." The vow felt like wet cement, heavy, hardening fast. Jade decided to accept whatever the court ruled. No more shortcuts. Yet life has a fox's sly humor. The week of the hearing, Jade's new manager slashed shifts. Without the expected income, her financial spreadsheet collapsed. The social worker called. "Unless you can document another $2,000 in annual earnings, we'll have to postpone." Postpone meant back on the foster list. That night, Jade returned to the fairgrounds alone. The carnival was packing for the next town, but the spiral still pulsed at the lot's edge. Pendle smoked beside the ticket booth. "Need another ride?" he said, as if expecting her. "Just enough to bridge a gap," Jade answered. 2 rotations. He exhaled a wreath of smoke. "You know the math. 2 more puts you at 32. Start slipping into your middle years sooner than later." "I'll live." "You'll shorten it, actually." He held open the gate. "Tickets double the price after sunset." "I have cash." She slapped bills into his palm. Inside, only one other rider stood against the glass, a woman nursing a grief-etched scowl. She gripped a wedding ring on a chain and wouldn't meet Jade's eyes. Pendle sealed the compartment and gravity peeled off again. 1. The ache in Jade's knees deepened, a premonition of rainy day throbs. 2. A flutter of anxiety bird-winged through her chest. What if enough is never enough? The floor rose. The lights snapped bright. Outside, Pendle handed her a mirror from his pocket. "Take a look." Fine lines radiated from her eyes. Laugh lines, but also something sterner. She thanked him anyway and hurried home. Evie sat on the couch, hugging a pillow. "You promised." "I broke the promise," Jade admitted. "I was scared of losing you." Evie pressed her face into the pillow, muffling a sob. "Do I have to grow up alone while you keep jumping?" "No more jumps." Jade's own voice roughened. "I'll give the judge whatever years I've got left, honestly. But I need you to forgive me for burning through a few extra." The next morning, they went together to family court. The clerk checked Jade's paperwork, scanned her driver's license. No questions. She looked 32. The document said 32. After 2 hours, the judge signed permanent guardianship to Jade Pollard, noting her demonstrated maturity, financial solvency, and sibling bond. Outside the courthouse, Evie clutched Jade's hand. "We did it." "You did it," Jade said, kneeling despite the twinge in her knees. "You kept me honest." A week later, the carnival rolled back through town on its migration north. Jade entertained a dangerous curiosity. Would Pendle recognize her if she walked by? Did the spiral still hum her forward in his dreams the way it haunted hers? She fought the temptation by locking her tips in a college fund jar labeled Evie's Years. Every time she slipped bills inside, the jar clinked like a little bell of promise. Time goes one way for most of us, and the hardest part is learning to be grateful. Yet stories never end so tidily at the edge of a midway. People kept writing. Rumors continued. A terminal patient who spun 20 times to see her grandchild graduate. A deserter who tried to shave off his jail sentence, only to discover the parole board didn't buy carnival math. A pair of high school sweethearts who aged together into newlyweds in less than a quarter hour. Jade sometimes imagined them strangers, leaning into the glass cylinder, unaware how loudly the future could roar when invited. She pitied them, but didn't judge. Everyone bargains with time. The spiral simply wrote the contract in neon. Years passed like ordinary seasons. Jade and Evie celebrated real birthdays with sheet cakes and thrift store candles. Jade waited tables until her feet cried, finished online classes at midnight, became assistant manager at 3732 on paper set. She woke one morning to gray scattered at her temples. She let it stay. Age was no longer an enemy, but a record of choices she could finally stand behind. The spiral still toured the region, but she never went back. One blustery November, while Jade balanced invoices at the diner office, a young waitress burst in saying someone asked for her. Jade walked onto the floor and found Pendle occupying booth 6, swirling coffee. He looked older, truly older, not right old, face sun-creased, hands trembling, yet his eyes held the same pond scum green. He slid a folded paper across the table. "We close the spiral next month," he said. "The boss figures insurance costs more than the legend brings in these days. Thought you'd want the last of your punch card." Jade unfolded it. 3 rides remained untorn. She laughed, surprising herself. "I'm through bargaining." Pendle nodded. "Some folks are." He pushed back his cup. "Keep the stubs. Souvenir." She watched him shuffle out into the wind, coat flapping like a loose sail. The punch card felt weightless between her fingers, yet heavy with everything it promised. At home, she found Evie now, a tall, bright-eyed 14, writing an English paper. Jade placed a card on the desk. "What's that?" Evie asked. "A reminder," Jade said, tearing the cardstock in half, then half again until it fluttered like confetti into the trash. "That shortcuts cost more than the long way." Evie slipped her arm around Jade's waist. "I like the long way. We get more stories." Jade kissed her sister's temple, silver strands brushing brown. Outside, a late bus honked. The neighborhood trees rattled their bare branches like applause for the simple miracle of ordinary time. Together they sat down to plan dinner, 1 minute giving way to another, in the only direction that matters. Forward, steadily, at the normal human speed. Neither of them would ever again dream of changing.